Hey, this is Mike again over here at Rickson's Enterprises. Today I wanted to show you how to service a MCS-16, which the furnace inside is actually an HL2-16. First thing you're going to do is get your case removed, and some of these may not have a case. They may be a standalone, what we would call a 55 XLT. Or even one of these MCS-16s with the components all modular, separated. So we'll get these screws off. Once the screws come off, this cover should come off of here. Now you're looking at the furnace itself. Fuel lines will be attached most likely, but they should have plenty of room to leave connected and just kind of hang off the side for a minute. 13 millimeter is the size of these bolts now. Some of the older models, they had a 14 millimeter. So you'll pull the two bolts off that hold the plastic cover. There's one here, then one down here. Once you loosen those, they come off. That plastic cover will come off. You got a couple options here. Sometimes it makes it a little easier if you get yourself a flathead screwdriver, insert it into the shaft for the fan, and then you can kind of spin the fan, hold the screwdriver still and then spin the fan until the fan comes off. That gives you a little more room in here. Now, you have two sensors here that go to the back of the heater. I would unplug these sensors. Sometimes a little pry action from a screwdriver can help you. This rubber boot here slides out. So now that's disconnected. You have two more nuts that are on hinges. So you got a nut here and a nut here, and they're on hinges, so you don't have to take them all the way out. Really just loosen it, 2 or 3 turns. Get them kind of loosened up. Once they're loose, you should be able to, if you look here, they hinge out. So once you loosen them up, you'll hinge it out. Hinge the bottom one out. Once you hinge those, this whole head unit will come off. Now, you do have a harness connected here, so you got options. You can either go in from the side panel, unplug the connectors, unplug the harness, or what's sometimes a little bit easier since you have the fan off, there is a release tab here, and if you just push in on that tab and then kind of wiggle back and forth, that'll unplug. You have another rubber grommet that comes off back there. Now the only thing that's connected is the fuel lines, and if you wanted to, say, pinch off the fuel lines or block them, you could pull the lines off and pull this whole head unit out. A lot of times there's enough hose here to just pull the unit out. Then you can kind of get a good look at what your nozzle assembly looks like, your igniter, spark generator, what these components look like. So we'll come back to this here in just a second. Set that off to the side. This is your burner tube, and this should be fairly clean. It doesn't have to be shiny like this. This one's new, but it should be clean. You shouldn't have all these holes blocked up. A lot of times what we'll do is we'll pull the burner tube, inspect the fins on the inside. So if you look down in there, you can see all these fins. Make sure this exhaust port's not blocked. All these fins are fairly clean. It doesn't have to be perfect, but again, stick a vacuum in there, clean it out a little bit. It's not a bad idea if it's real dirty. Make sure this burn tube's cleaned out. And if you look down in the burn tube here, there's all these little teeny holes around the outside edge. Those should be all clear. Nothing big debris or build up in there. Once this is cleaned up, that's cleaned up. So the burn tube and the heat exchanger body are both cleaned up. When you go to reinsert this, if you notice, there's a notch. We call this the 12 o'clock notch. There's also a notch in the case that matches this. So when you slide this back in, it should be at 12 o'clock. And it sits in. Now, if you say you had it off at, say, 11 o'clock, Now if you notice there's a gap here. The problem is if you put the case and the head all back together like this, it will smash down, it just won't run. So make sure this notch is at 12 o'clock, seats all the way flush. So that's good, you've cleaned that out, that's all cleaned up. Now on the next part here, you have your igniter, which is plastic, and they are fairly brittle. So a lot of times what I'll do here is I'll get a screwdriver just kind of down in the backside here. If I can do it without breaking it. Sometimes you kind of go a little bit on both sides. I can get her to go. She keeps clicking back and forth on me. Well, try not to drop it. If you do get a new igniter, they come with a tool that measures the gap from the nozzle, but this igniter's new. We're in good shape still. Once you get the igniter off, this little retainer clip, kind of just pull. Little retainer clip comes out. The baffle plate comes off. Now you're down to your nozzle. Normally what I'll do is I'll get you have to have a backing wrench on the lower end, and then a wrench up top. Hold the backing wrench still, spin the nozzle out. You can take the nozzle, a little bit of carb cleaner, clean up the nozzle. You don't really want to spray anything into the nozzle assembly. Keep it nice and clean in there. There's actually a filter behind here, so that should be all clean inside. But if you want to spray the nozzle with carb cleaner, clean this up, you can remove it, clean it up, put it back in. Again, when you put it back in, you're going to want to put a backing wrench down here, and then a wrench up top, tighten it in. Once you're done there, everything looks clean. You can put this back on. There's a little notch next to the nozzle assembly here that this little cutout fits inside of. So when you slip this on, it should seat nice and tight. There's a little notch here that keeps that retainer clip in. So you got your retainer clip. Put that back on. Get your igniter. Sometimes if these get overheated, say that it's all blocked up with carbon, this is your spark generator. This component here, this is what creates the spark. Again, it's plastic, so they can actually get a little warped and melted here over lots and lots of use or build-up. If this is all warped and damaged, you may think about replacing the spark generator. If this is all warped and damaged, you may think about replacing the igniter. Get the new igniter or your old one back on, make sure everything looks good. Obviously, these igniter electrodes should not be touching the nozzle. When they spark, they should spark across each other, not to the nozzle. Once this is all cleaned up, you're good there. Okay, everything's great. We're going to go for the reinstall here. Know that the big plug that came out, that's on the bottom side. So we'll set this rubber grommet back in place here. Then we will connect the harness back. Nice and tight, clicked in. So that's good, that's good. Burner tubes at 12 o'clock. Line that up. Hinge your nuts back in place. These don't got to be tight, crazy tight, but you want them snug. You want them comfortably tight. So that's there. We will put our temperature sensors back in. This little rubber grommet slips into the case here. Push it all the way back. You can't really mix these up. One of them's 2-wire, one of them's 3-wire. There's a 2-wire hole and a 3-wire hole, so you really can't mix them up. Push this guy back in, make sure it's seated and plugged in properly. Same with that one. So that's good, that's good. Now we can put our fan assembly back on. I think this is reverse thread. So left E is tightening and right E is loosening. Put your screwdriver back on there. And again, you don't have to go crazy, just, get it somewhat tight. And you got your nose cone. Now, one thing I do want to mention about this nose cone, this is your air-fuel mixture adjustment. So if you go to high altitude and it's burning a little dirty, or you need to change the way it's burning, this is your adjustment. So you'll loosen these two screws and then make a very slight turn, a very slight adjustment. You may go over a 1/16 of an inch, you may go over an 1/8 of an inch. It just depends on how high you are in altitude. What you're really looking for is when this thing fires up, you're gonna get a woof, and then it should be nice and smooth. If you're getting a woof and then a blah, 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 we call it waffling, where it's kind of fluctuating and burning inconsistent. You'll want to loosen these two screws, give it just a slight adjustment one way or the other, and when that waffling stops, then you're pretty good. If the exhaust smells really dirty, if it smells acrid, you know, almost burning your nose or burning your face when you smell it, this is out of adjustment. Or there's something else going on in line, exhaust clogged up, something else. So make sure these don't get turned way off. You barely want to give any adjustment here. At that point, this is good, this is good. All this stuff's back on. You can hook up your fuel lines if you disconnected them. Then we can put the case back together here. We just use these little rubber grommets here to kind of protect the fuel lines so they don't end up getting damaged. Sense back on. These screws are, you almost want to do them by hand first, because if you just blast them in with a gun and they cross thread, well, then you're in trouble. They're a little welded pin on the inside, and if that breaks off, especially if it's attached to the screw, you'll be just cutting the screw off with something. It won't go back on. So a lot of times getting these on by hand is key to not having problems when you go to tighten them down. Again, this is the same procedure on a standalone unit, other than you wouldn't have to take the case off and do all this extra work. The unit would be just sitting. And when you tighten these, don't over tighten them. Alrighty, so that's how you'd service one of these HL216s. The HL224s are the same. The HL235s are the same. So all that model of this, you know, the big units. This is 55,000 up to 80,000 or 82,000 BTU. They're all the same procedure to service them. And if you guys get any questions or something comes up, feel free to give us a call like always. Again, this is Mike at Rixon's. Have a good day.